There was a link to the advanced packet sent out in an email by Steve Herman on last Friday. There was also a link to the draft LRTP document. As has been our practice, we won't bring most of the items up on screen. We'll assume that you can access them either, for those of you that have requested a printed copy of the packet, that you'll be able to flip through and find those, or that you'll be able to find them on your screen from the advanced PDF that Steve mailed. As we go through, we will use the page numbers from the PDF for reference to kind of help everyone stay on the same page. We are running a little bit shorter than we have been for the last couple of meetings, so I think I'd like to try and get through without the recess today, and I think if we do that, we can probably end up by 11:15. As we typically ask, please mute your mics when they're not in use, when you're not adding to the conversation, and when you are, we ask that we certainly introduce yourself when giving a motion, a second, or asking a question. So with those couple of things out of the way, I would ask, is there anyone on the call this morning for the purpose of providing comment on an item that's not listed on the agenda? All right, then hearing none, I'd like to go on to the meat of the agenda. I guess I would like to ask your indulgence. We're not going to do this explicitly following Robert's Rules of Order, but we have Mr. Rank with us this morning for a couple of agenda items, and he's got a conflict coming up at 10 o'clock. So if there are no objections, I'd like to front load the agenda items where we usually hear from John, starting with item E, the update on the CSVT project, and then sliding into the TIP administrative modifications and amendments, so we can get through the items where we'd hear from him and get him on to his next meeting without causing any shuffling for him. Are there any objections to that or any discussion that we should have before doing so? All right, then hearing none, John, if you're ready, can you start us off with the update on the CSVT?
Thanks, Jim. Good morning, everybody. Jim, can you hear me?
Can hear you good.
Very good. The CSVT report is going to be pretty short. I don't have anything to update really on the northern section or the southern section anymore from the last time I gave an update. Again, on the northern section, final paving operations are commencing and in full swing. And in the southern section, we are working towards letting in the fall, early winter for the first contract for the earthwork of the southern section. The one thing I want to point out right now is we're probably within a year of the northern section opening up, and therefore the route designations are going to change a bit. I suggest everybody go to the csvt.com website and click on the maps. From there, you can see the interim designation map, which shows you what the routes will become. Basically, what's going to happen in a nutshell is on Northumberland 147, when it goes across the bridge, will continue to be 147, and then combine with 15, and then continue all the way down into Sunbury and pick up 147 there, where it is originally. 405 will then replace 147. As you can see, Jim's pulling it up here for the people who can see on the screen. From where basically from where it splits off in Point Township, and then continue through Northumberland, and then it continue through Shikellamy, all the way to basically into Sunbury, where then it runs into 61. So that will no longer be 147. That will turn into 405. So basically that section from 61 all the way up into Point Township, all the way then continuing where 405 is currently, up through the remaining part of Northumberland into Milton and all points greater will be all 405. 147 again is moving across the river and then adjoining with 15, going down to 61, adjoining with that, and then picking up 147 where it was across the river. It's a bit confusing. That's why I'm suggesting now, I'm starting to bring this up now that, you know, all those, especially who have interest in the area, start familiarizing themselves with the new designations. And that is all I have.
John, are any discussions with the EMS personnel about the route changes? Do they have a meeting set up for that?
I'm pretty sure they do, Jim, but I will double check that.
Okay.
Good morning, John. This is Catherine. At SEDA-COG. I just wanted to bring up, we had a active transportation meeting on Wednesday afternoon, and a couple of the members had brought up other instances where large transportation projects have opened in the past, and right before it was opened to vehicular traffic, they had a bike ped day or perhaps a weekend. I'm not sure how long it was. But some of them were asking if that would be an opportunity on the CSVT, at least the northern section. And I was just curious if that is an option or if there's someone else I need to reach out to about that.
I believe it could be an option, Catherine. Let me look into it. I'll talk with the CSVT people, but and then I'll get back with you on that, and hopefully point you in the right direction.
Okay,
that point.
sounds good.
Okay, any other questions for John on the CSVT? All right. Then hearing none, we're going to backtrack an item on the agenda to item D, the TIP administrative modifications and amendments. And we're going to mix that up a little bit and start with the administrative actions for District 3. In your packet, those start on page 13. Like we've been doing since we started the virtual format meetings, we're just going to provide a quick overview of what we think is happening in these changes. And then we'll let John add comments or correct us where we're off in our understanding, or open that up for you to ask questions directly to John. So walking through that, what we're seeing is that we saw funding increases in the engineering phase on the project on 11 east of the River Bridge for ongoing construction engineering. We saw 7 projects where we're just adjusting the funding year so that where the money shows up on the tip matches up a little bit better with where we expect it to be required. We saw 2 projects where we're adding an engineering phase to the existing project to allow us to do a little bit heavier work a little bit further in advance. There are 3 projects listed on page 15 where we're adding funding to cover bids that came in a little bit higher than were expected. On the flip side, there's 2 projects where we're increasing to cover cost increases that happen when the project was already underway. And then we've actually got a local bridge project over in Columbia County where we're turning unused funding back to the line item because we're able to wrap the project up without requiring everything that was in the original budget. We are adding a phase for a project where the county maintenance didn't cover sufficient funding. So we're just picking up where the overrun was out of the tip. And then on the last item in the District 3 section, we've got a couple of changes to an interstate project. The first couple are moving the funding year around, and then we're actually adding a little bit of funding to do some additional tree trimming to pull it back and improve visibility. So with that really loose overview of what we understood the changes to be, are there any questions on specific projects for Mr. Rank? All right, if nobody has any questions, then do we have a motion to accept the administrative actions as they're provided?
So moved, Greg Moulter, Montour County.
All right, Greg, thanks for the motion. Is there a second?
Seconded, Eric Staley, Columbia County.
All right, Eric, thanks for the second. Is there any continuing discussion? Any other questions that need to be asked before we act on this? Then hearing none, I would ask that everyone in favor of accepting the actions as presented signify now by saying aye.
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 If there is anyone opposed to accepting them as presented, please signify now by saying nay. And is there anyone that wishes to abstain among the voting members? All right, hearing none, then the administrative actions are accepted as presented for District 3. John, thanks for your help this morning. I know you have to drop off for another meeting. Please feel free to do that. And if you have the chance to join us later on, please do so.
Thanks, Jim. I definitely will be here till 10 and then probably dropping off soon after that.
All right, great. Appreciate your flexibility this morning. That brings us around to the administrative actions for District 2. Those are on pages 10 to 12. The way Mark summed this up was that they've been really busy and they're trying to use every dollar that they can as efficiently as possible. So how that breaks out, what we saw happening in these changes is that we had 3 projects where there were underruns and we were turning money back into the line items. There were 6 existing projects where we're adding pre-construction phases so that we can pull the design or survey phases ahead, or there's one where we're 2 actually where we're addressing right of way and utilities. We have a phase for a project on 220. This was a project on the old tip. The work ran a little bit long, so we're extending it onto the new tip with this move. And we have a couple of overruns on bridge projects. The Star 75 bridge over the Norfolk Southern right of way and 64 bridge over Fishing Creek. We do have a couple of projects where we're pushing the funding year around. Then we also put some money into the SR 1001 project in order to show it as fully funded, supporting a earmark request that the staff made. And we'll talk about that under the UPWP report. But this is basically fleshing it out so we could show the tools as needed on the tip. So with that really loose summary, are there any questions for those projects for Mr. Schultz from District 2? All right, then hearing none, do we have a motion to accept the administrative actions for District 2 as presented?
Jim, this is Brad Kerstetter. I'll make that motion.
Okay, I'll second it. It's Katie.
All right, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Katie, for the motion and the second. Are there any further questions or discussion that needs to be had on these? Hearing none, if all of you in favor of accepting the administrative actions for District 2 as presented would signify by saying aye.
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 If the members opposed at this time, if you please signify by saying nay. And are there any members that wish to abstain? All right, hearing none, the administrative actions for District 2 are accepted as presented. Thank you for helping us walk through those. So that gets us through items E and items D on the tip. I'd like to go back on track at this point and pick up item C, which was the approval of the minutes from the March 19th MPO meeting. Those begin on page 14 of the packet. And the first question would be if there are any changes or additions to the minutes that should be considered at this time. All right, then hearing none, can we have a motion from a voting member to accept the minutes as presented?
I'll move. Greg Moulter, Montour County.
All right, Greg, thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's Katie.
Katie, thank you for the second. Is there any further discussion on the minutes? Then hearing none, all those in favor of accepting them as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 If there are any opposed, please signify by saying nay at this time. And are there any members that wish to abstain? All right, then the minutes are accepted as presented. Thank you. All right, that brings us down to item F, the UPWP update. And under this, there's a staff report in your packet that starts on page 38. I think I'd like to borrow Mark Schultz's comment and say that we've been busy. Just from the highlights reel, there are a couple of things regarding the UPWP. Number one, the PennDOT CPDM has given us the opportunity to add $30,000 of funding to year 2 of the UPWP. There is a table showing how we would propose to do that on page 46. Essentially, what we'd be doing is extending the task, I think it's S2 for plan updates and support, into year 2 and shifting funding around so that this $30,000 would essentially show up under that item. Our understanding so far is that we can share this with you as an administrative item and then make those changes to the tip, but we wanted to make sure that we were sharing it with you and giving you a chance to comment on it. So if there are anyone that would, if anyone has any heartburn about this, or would want to see us put this to a different task or handle it in a different way, this is an opportunity to have that conversation. All right, hearing no comments on that, we are starting coordination on development of the next UPWP. We're hoping to bring a draft of that to this group at the September meeting, and we're holding a coordination meeting with PennDOT and FHWA next week. Any members that would like to participate in that meeting or just be logged in for the discussion, certainly you're welcome to do so. Just please contact Steve or I, and we will forward you the link. And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Thursday morning that we landed on that?
That's correct, Jim. Thursday, the 27th.
Okay, and that meeting will be held virtually. Moving on through the staff report, there are items on the county bridge prioritization meetings and the LRTP that we'll catch later under their own agenda items. At the last meeting, talking about the UPWP, we noted that PennDOT sometimes opens the window for us to apply for additional funding for studies through supplemental planning and research funds, but they made it clear that they didn't anticipate having the funding to do so this year. Instead, what PennDOT recommended is that we would consider submitting any such studies to the PennDOT Connects programs. So we've been having conversations with you where these type of issues come up during the bridge prioritization meetings with each of the 8 counties. And there are 2 candidates that have come up through that process that we feel are pretty strong. Those include the Hogan Boulevard Bike Ped study. That scope is on page 48. And then a 522 improvements study looking at the section from essentially the grocery store out to Pauling Station. The draft scope for that starts on page 52. What we wanted to accomplish today is just get those in front of everybody and make sure that this still passes the smell test, that we have support of the sponsors and members on that. Where we anticipate going from with those is continuing to work with the sponsors and maybe drawing a little bit on our consultant team to kind of tighten up those scopes and get into a condition where they're ready to submit. One of the things we've been told about submitting for PennDOT Connects at this time is that it really helps the the process for these type of studies. If you can bring a little bit of local match to the table, it's not required under the program, but it really helps set you apart when they're trying to pick studies. We'll be having those conversations with the sponsors as well. And our thoughts are that we'll polish these up and show these to you one more time before we're ready to submit them. So look for these to come back at the June meeting in a more polished format. So long as we still have your support, we'll look at submitting these for the PennDOT Connects program. In the meantime, we welcome any comments about these particular projects. If you have something else that you feel is equally important that we should be considering this, please email us about that as well. Moving on through the.
I have a comment.
Yes, Katie.
I just want to say thank you so much for developing that write-up and the concept for this study, because when I read your analysis, I hadn't been aware of the crash data being so bad. We knew there were crashes, we knew there were pedestrians getting hit, but I didn't realize the frequency was as high as it was. So I just wanted to say this grew up out of a bunch of things, but it started with a local resident of Mill Hall Borough came to the commissioners and said, you know, there's no safe way to ride my bike from Mill Hall into Lock Haven. And he goes, I do it all the time and I'm risking my life. And so we drew up a potential bike path and submitted it as our #2 priority in the Middle Susquehanna bike ped plan that came out in 2019. And then PennDOT was planning on working one of the bridges in that area. And at a PennDOT Connects meeting about that project, we brought it up again. And also we do an annual tour with our District 2 maintenance manager of the whole county. And we sort of brought him over to that area and pointed, look at this, look at that. And so amongst all those things, it resulted in this plan, potential plan. And it's really nice to know that your voices get heard and that, you know, that you guys are as responsive as you are. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And definitely I want to share the credit or put the credit where it belongs for pulling the write-up together. That goes to Mr. Herman, that he was able to pull the data together and put it that you see. So this is the process is supposed to work. And this is one of the steps along the path to getting the funding to actually get the work done. So we appreciate the support, and we just want to make sure we're transparent about what we're doing with this and how we're trying to move it forward. All right, a couple of other items to pull out of the staff report. I wanted to be clear that we did request earmarks for 2 projects in the region as part of the reauthorization process. Both of those fell in Representative Keller's district. Again, they came out of discussions with the districts and in some cases in discussions in the regional prioritization meetings. The 2 projects that we submitted on were the SR 1001 Ferensville Road improvements over in Clinton County. I feel like that's a really strong project for this, just because there is a nice $1 million sized hole that an earmark would really help move that project along. And that's a project that the district and local sponsors and the MPO has been trying to complete since we were actually an RPO. So there's a lot of history to it, and it'd be great to see it finally moving forward and hitting the potential that we've seen there along the whole road. The other project that we put a request in for was the SR 104 bridge over the county line between Snyder County and Juniata County. It's a full rehab to a through truss bridge. The bridge has been subject to emergency closures for repairs twice in the last 5 years. And this project would be a full rehab. So we think it's a strong candidate for this process. And the letter requests that we pulled together are included on pages 54 and 55. We realize that in an ideal world, we would be showing you this as a draft before we actually went ahead and submitted it. That wasn't possible with the way the timeline fell out for this. So again, when we go through these processes, we are moving forward and selecting projects that we understand to be local and regional priorities. And we are as transparent as transparent as we can be with you through and after the process. If there are any questions about that or any comments, we certainly welcome those. We did note that there was a sizable request submitted for the city of Shamokin over in Northumberland County through Representative Muser's office. That came through the Revitalized Shamokin program here at SEDA-COG, so I can't share a lot of information of how it came to be or even detailed information about the scope. But we are enthusiastic to see the implementation potentially moving forward. A couple of other things that we've completed since the last meeting. There are a few letters tucked in there. There is a support letter for a funding request for the Bald Eagle Valley Trail. And then there are comments, the comments that we spoke about at the last meeting for the proposed revisions to the process for designated metropolitan statistical areas. We went ahead, submitted the comments that we shared. They're included in the packet. There was an opportunity to provide comments on the proposed changes to the census process for designated urbanized areas. The comments were due yesterday. Due to workload, we were not able to pull together a set of comments for those. We are continuing to follow the issue. And one of the reasons we felt comfortable in taking the gas off that effort was we had participated in webinars leading up to that. And I think we were able to gather a little bit of confidence that there was no existential threat behind the way, for small MPOs, behind the way those changes in the methodology were presented. And that if anything, there was certainly a lot of support for MPOs like ours that are kind of right on that boundary between around 50,000 people. So we'll be watching those issues as we move forward, but we did miss the opportunity to provide comment. A couple of brief notes about studies we're involved in. We've been working on the CSVT Special Impacts Study. As always, a thank you to Lycoming County and the Watts MPO for bringing us into that process. Some milestones coming up. We look for a local officials briefing and a virtual public meeting to be held early in July. And then there will be a presentation to the July Watts MPO meeting. And I think if there's any of you that would like to attend that and see the way that it's presented for adoption or provide comments on it, we can certainly share that information for the Watts meeting later in July. The last study to touch on is the Central Regional Operations Plan. If you think back to 2018, that was the last update. This is PennDOT's regional plan for addressing TISMO or technology-oriented solutions for operations and congestion. The way that those traffic operations are managed for both districts in our area is through the District 3 Traffic Operations Center. They've kicked off an interim update to that plan. It's on a very short schedule. They're hoping to wrap it up by July. They are reaching out to us for specific input on projects. So we will talk with them next week about what we carried forward in our long range plan update, what kind of input we've had from members on those issues since, and try and get that into the process. If any of you are interested in providing input in that or being involved in that process, please contact me via email. And those would be things like, for instance, if you have a coordinated signal system in your area where people have been working on improvements to the timing and they're just not, they're hitting roadblocks, or if you see the opportunity for something like designated or dynamic message sign to be posted to address some of the traffic issues or routing issues that you're seeing, those are kind of the fodder for this type of plan. So if you have questions about it, if you have some things we should be thinking about, please shoot us an email, or if you're just curious about it and you want us to send you a link to the previous plan so you can see what's in it, certainly send us an email, and we can pull that out of the 2018 December meeting and share that with you as well. Last couple of items on my side of this report. We are participating in work groups with PennDOT for the UPWP and TIP updates, working on the guidance that will lay out the rules and processes for those updates. We expect that information to be shared at the planning partners meeting in late June. So that's really going to start the clock running on those update efforts. And then if you check the staff report, you will see a listing of the meetings we've attended, hosted, or participated in on particular projects since the March meeting. If there are no questions on that update, then I'd like to pass it over to Mr. Herman for an update on the TA projects for what's happened since the March meeting, and also for him to cover the new item in this section of the packet, the summary of HOP permit information that's provided. Steve?
Sure. Thank you, Jim. Real quick before I get into some of the updates, we did have a phone caller join us with a number of 327-2200. If you could just identify yourself, that'd be great. We could rename you, and then folks will know who has joined the group that didn't have an actual name associated with their phone number. So 327-2200.
Hey, it's Scott Williams from the Williamsport MPO.
Hey, Scott. I figured it was a Williamsport number, but I wasn't sure who it was associated with. So thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Okay, now as Jim said, the transportation alternative set aside update, our normal progress reporting there begins on page 44. And those are the projects that were selected in the 2018 round. Great headway has been made on the majority of those. And the things I'll just call out in bold there are for the Bull Run Greenway and Lewisburg Borough. Since we last met in June, the bids were open for that project. I know John has probably dropped off by now, John Rank at District 3, but I haven't heard about major issues there in terms of the bids or cost increases. So hopefully those came in well, and that one will be under construction this year. And the other one is the Brown Township Streetscape in Reedsville, Mifflin County. Since we last met, the notice to proceed was issued for the contractor on that. So both of those milestones were met in early April. So that's the progress to report on the 2018 round. Any questions on those before I get into new things with TA? Okay, well, and some exciting news. We've been part of the group, as we've been mentioning, to review the program guidance and the development of a new application for transportation alternatives. And we've been getting some input there and feedback, and then asking questions. And just this week, we learned some more details on the next iteration, the next round. And it's likely to be out for applicants to begin preparing their applications in late June. Probably June 28th will be the official opening for the next transportation alternative set aside or statewide solicitation, and applications will be due on October the 8th. So at least be a few months to develop those, meet with district staff, pull together the information, communicate with us as well as part of that process. And the sponsors will need to submit a pre-app, which is something new this time, a pre-application by September 10th, and meet with the PennDOT district staff before applying. And the MPO staff will be invited to participate in that as well. Once the applications are in by the deadline of October 8th, SEDA-COG MPO and all the others across the state will have until January 14th of 2022 to review and comment on the applications. So as we've customarily done, we'll look to schedule a local review meeting. Those of you on the MPO that are interested, participate in that process to do those technical reviews and have some Q&A opportunities to vet the projects with the sponsors. We'll try and schedule a meeting hopefully between October and December of this year to go through that process and better inform our review and our comments to prioritize those. The statewide committee will meet in January and hopefully go about their decision-making process. And then hopefully maybe sometime February, March, we'll we'll see announcements on the awards, but we don't have a firm date on any of that timetable yet for awards. PennDOT's projecting at least $18 million to be available for the any area applicants across the state. And there's a possibility there'll be additional money, maybe up to another $18 million, but that's contingent on Congress acting on a new federal transportation bill, as Jim mentioned, with the reauthorization underway. But hopefully, we'll have good identified projects that could use those funds if they become available. But $18 million is definitely in play. And then we're expecting to be competitive usual. Last time I think there were about 200 applications. So anything you can do as county and other local officials working with sponsors, to prepare applications and make them most competitive, and working with their engineers, building additional local support. If they haven't already started design work, those types of things, identifying some of the constraints with right of way or environmental issues, encourage you to do that. PennDOT will look to do a webinar on the new online application and updated guidelines probably in late June. And as part of that pre-application, they'll be collecting information on the project details, essential details, the location, and any workflow issues that need to be handed across to the PennDOT district staff to review and comment on it. So we're pleased by that and the opportunity for new projects to be approved. We know there's been several things identified in local and regional plans, and we're here to support you if you're working on these applications. So any questions about the TA set aside?
Yeah, I have one. It's Katie. We should be finished with our current 2018 TAP by September 10th when the pre-app is due. But can you apply if you've got one that's running and maybe, say it goes long?
Yep. Yeah. If you have an active project underway, you can certainly apply.
Okay. It'll be done by January for sure.
Okay, great. Yep. Yeah. We've seen in the past several municipalities, if they're going through their different phases of a streetscape or a trail, they might have one that's nearing completion and they're applying for the extension or next phase of it. So that certainly
that's our plan, the next phase of our Baldigo Valley Trail.
Okay, great. Yeah, and just a reminder, these are 100% construction funds. So the things that lead to getting the project ready for bidding will all be the sponsor's responsibility. All the engineering, design work, right of way, utilities. But then these funds can be used for 100% of the construction and the payments toward the inspection services. So just a reminder on that. But there's broad eligibility for other types of categories. But the majority that we typically would see would be for trails, sidewalks, and streetscape type projects in the past, historic bridge rehabilitation, covered bridges, and things like that. But we'll share more details certainly as they come together, the final guidance, and we'll get that out to all the MPO members, and we'll hit a fair number of municipalities, but anything you want to do to promote and market it further would be appreciated. Any questions from other members or comments? Okay, hearing none, then the other thing Jim mentioned here, a new item in the packet starts on page 54, runs to 55. And it's an export we had done from the PennDOT e-permitting system. We've been in this system for about a year or so now, and we're able to see the highway occupancy permits as they're submitted across the 8-county MPO region. And we were thinking of giving you kind of a snapshot of that through the packets, and we reached out to the District 2 permits manager, and he said it'd be fine to share this. So we were going to start doing this on a recurring basis. So you can see there the export of the recently assessed applications for low volume, medium volume, high volume, and minimum use driveways across the region. So I just encourage you to take a look at that. If there's things, if you're not in the system to review these, feel free to let us know if you have questions, or try and go through the clearance process to get approved so that you can get automatic notifications and take a look at these as well if you're not already doing so. I know there's provisions that they have to reach out to the local officials on land use issues, but if you want to get into the e-permitting system, it works pretty well. You can see all the various attachments and review the comments that come back from the PennDOT district staff on those. But we just did an export there, and it's ordered by the most recent submittal date. So from late April, I think, when we had exported that, early May, and running back till late last year, I think. So if there's things that stand out you haven't seen information on, feel free to reach out to us or reach out to the district staff and discuss those. Any questions on that or what's contained with those HOP permit applications?
Yeah, me again. What constitutes low volume as PennDOT defines it? Because they show one for Clinton and it's the highest volume area in our county. It's that Hogan Boulevard, but they call it low volume. So is there?
Yeah, that'd be the trips that be made on that access into that business or that developer. So I think low
okay.
volume is usually 50 ADT to about 1,500 trips a
Okay.
day.
Yeah. Okay. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, it's on the number of trips that would be generated coming
That
in.
would go in that drive. Okay. Yep.
Is that correct, Jim, from your experience as well?
I think so, but I defer to Chris or Mark that they might be a little bit closer to that than I am. It's been over 11 years.
Yeah, Steve, I concur with what with your comments.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think the minimum.
Yeah, this is Rob.
50 or less.
Yeah, this is Rob Jakonski. It's typically 750. So your 0 to 1,500 is kind of right there in line.
Okay. Great. Thanks for confirming that, guys. Okay, Jim, then back to you for the next agenda item, unless there's any other commentary on the work program staff reporting.
If there are no questions, then that cues us up for item G, the draft SEDA-COG long-range transportation plan. Don, are you ready to go on that?
I am. Let me share my screen here for the presentation. People able to see that?
Coming through, yes.
Okay, good. I'd like to get my screen configured properly first, I think. Okay, back up there. All right. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate the chance to tell you where we are right now again with the LRTP. We're coming down toward the end, which is good news, and I think we're going to have a good product to build on over the next many years. There are a few minor edits that I've made since the version of this was put into your packet. They're just minor, but in case you see something that looks a little bit different, we made a couple more tweaks here just in the last few days. Again, please stop me if you have questions or if there's an issue with the audio that you can't hear me properly or whatever. Hopefully we won't have that as a problem today. We're appreciative also of having Brian Funkhauser from Michael Baker on the phone. So when we get to the end, particularly if there's any comments or questions, certainly for myself or Jim or Catherine Weil, Brian also may be able to answer things. So we'll move along here. This is in two parts today. The first thing I'd like to do is tell you what's happened here over the last couple of months since we met last time. And then the second part is a presentation of what basically we're considering to be our executive summary for the whole plan. We have an online version of that I'll tell you more about. That is going to be a interactive, it already is an interactive version to present the major steps for the long-range transportation plan. We'll be recording a version of that to be used at the public presentation. And there certainly will be an executive summary as part of the final plan as well. But as you can see here, first of all, we're down near the bottom of our schedule. We've gone through a lot of steps on being able to put together a final draft plan that, with your permission, we would like to release for public comment as of Monday and send out to you as well. We will be targeting June 3rd for the virtual public meeting, which, as the name implies, is going to be held virtually this time. And we would like to have the public comment period essentially extend, although it says on this chart here, May 23rd, it will start May 24th, the day after, and conclude then on June 22nd. We would like to bring the final plan before you at the June 25th meeting for adoption. And we'll talk some more about some of these steps here just a second. There are some changes in what we have since the first draft was issued to you back in November. We have conducted the agency coordination meeting with Michael Baker's assistants in March. And these are all things that are in the new version, or the final draft version of the plan, by the way, new information since the November version was released. We've conducted public outreach. The results have been completed. There was an online survey with over 200 responses. There were interviews with a couple of human services agencies. All of that information has been included in this version of the draft plan for the results. There's an environmental justice benefits and burdens analysis that was completed, essentially with Catherine leading that, and that will be included in the final report as an appendix as well. We've updated the public transit section. The performance measures section has been significantly expanded, updated, further explained, particularly with the assistance of the Michael Baker team on that. As far as projects go, you've heard us talk a little bit about this, asset management and discretionary projects. That section has been significantly expanded as well with further discussion. We have much more to say in this version about how the corridors of opportunity have been defined and applied to various parts of the MPO region. The CSVT section has been updated with the assistance from District 3 to help out on that. The section that covers financial projections has been updated. The GIS-based hub website that you've heard us talk about is featured more prominently. I mentioned that it also is serving the purpose right now as an executive summary presentation, and based on being able to access story map of projects and related data information. And we've completed an implementation actions section, which serves as the final main part of the document. A bit more on the public outreach and comments resolution section. We will be tracking during the public comment period comments that will be logged and tracked and addressed. We'll be using the same approach pretty much as last time, where this is an example page of what I'll be tracking. I will be collecting comments from yourselves, from general public, anyone who wishes to provide comments on the plan. I'm certainly not going to go down this whole page here, but it includes information you would expect on specific number of comment. We'll be tracking the date it was received, who made the comment, and so on. We'll be also including a column in there for status of the comment, what the resolution was, what the date of the update of this for the status was, what the editor was for this, and back checking. So this will be a continual process that will be also going on after the formal adoption date. So the public comment period this time has been revised due to COVID-19 impacts and other aspects of the process as well. This time around, we've been using online resources a lot more, by necessity, obviously, with COVID-19, but also we think it improves the process in several respects. So again, this time getting public comments and public outreach is a little bit different, where in the past, perhaps all of the member agencies would get hard copies to provide at your place of business. I appreciate the help that all of you provided in getting back to me about whether your office is open, what the hours are, and so on. We will be delivering, or the copies will be delivered most likely this afternoon to everybody. So if you are open for business and you're providing access for the general public to come in, the copies will be provided to you today. hopefully. We also have extras. If you need them, please let us know, and we can provide that to you. I mentioned we are shooting for the public meeting to be held on June 3rd. We'll be talking a little bit more about that. In the past versions, the times that the LRTP has been updated, most of the comments that have been received were minor. We certainly want to encourage you to provide further comments to this version of the draft report. Hopefully some of the comments that you made earlier on for the first version will, I think, decrease the number of comments that we might get back from you this time. And that would be certainly, I think, a good thing, but that we've given you a lot of this information already prior to this version. The responses to the comments I mentioned will follow the adoption of the plan. There will be a second shorter comment period to review any major changes if they're needed as well at the end of the formal public comment period. The steps for approval include, there will be a summary of participation in the comment period. The comments received document will be prepared. We'll provide an overview of any planned replies that might be needed at the next meeting. If there are any major changes and a second comment period would be required, we'll communicate what the revised adoption timeline will be. And it is our goal to be able to ask for at least provisional adoption at the June 25th MPO meeting. So I will pause here for just a minute. If anyone has comments about what I've gone over here, this would be a good time before I go in to show you a little bit of what our executive summary public comment presentation will look like.
Hey, good morning, Don. This is Matt Smoker with Federal Highways. How are you this morning?
Good, Matt. Thank you.
Hey, I just want to get back to you and Jim and apologize. You did send me your write-up on your changes to your public participation due to COVID impacts. I did review that, but I think I forgot to respond. But I am on board. I support what you provided. So thank you for that.
Okay, thanks for your help on that too. Any other?
Yeah, I will respond in email that way just to close out the communication loop, and you can keep it on file. So, but thank you.
Great, I appreciate that. Any other comments or anything before going on? Okay. This is what we're planning to provide and open up for access to for the public comment period, as well as the June 3rd public meeting. And I'd mentioned that this will be used, and I will be recording a narrated version of this that we're going to try to hold to about 15 minutes or so. It's our goal at the June 3rd public meeting to start off with this and play it as a pre-recorded presentation, and then open it up for general comments, questions, or other things people may want to discuss or bring up afterward. So I think it will be a nice thing to have a recorded version of this that can be available not just at the June 3rd meeting, but as needed. And our plan right now is, this is, as you may guess, we want to try to keep this fairly simple. It'll be based on using this as a PowerPoint presentation that'll have recorded narration and can be started and just play through till the end. So one of the goals that I've got in putting this together is to essentially not only walk down through the presentation and the steps that you'll see, but to highlight some of the things that people will need to keep in mind as they look at this website. Again, this is the online website that's been put together with the assistance of Michael Baker, and Catherine's been heavily involved in this. So you can see in the first slide right here, this is the entry slide for this, what we call the story map. And I've put a highlighted red box around instructions about how to get to the next step or what people might want to look at. So I'll just conduct this briefly. It won't take too long to walk down through these slides, but just to show you how this will go. Across the top, you see the red box there that says background and introduction. So every page or every part of the website that people might see will have this long banner across the top, the gray banner that has various aspects that people can click on and get information. In this case, the first one is background and introduction. So when the viewer looks at this, you get an overview right away of what the counties are in the MPO, a description of what the MPO is about and what the LRTP is about. The second area is strategic directions, and describes how the LRTP, certainly has the list of projects, but also includes policies and initiatives. So this is background information if anyone cares to look at things. The big box highlighted below that says directions is linked to individual documents. So if you click on the button that says implement the MPO strategic plan, you get a further listing of what that's all about. Same for the bottom two, in how the MPO is organized, how it operates, and how it fits the LRTP process. Regional trends and findings gets into a little bit more of the meat of what's included in the first part of the LRTP. You've seen some of these things before where we've gone down and showed you some information related to background on the transportation system in the MPO region. This is the first screen that people would see that comes up and says major trends and findings. So when you see that, you'll be also given a map to look at that is interactive, that you can get further information. So with the socio demographic characteristics screen, there's further information. There's a bar chart over on the left side that gives you the population projections for the region, but also this is interactive, so that the box over toward the right center, where I've clicked on Census Tract 502 for Columbia County, gives you more information about how many people live in that area. So this next series of slides pretty much operates the same way, where there's interactive tools or interfaces that can be drilled down through if people want to spend time to look at further information. Another one here is population age 65 and older. Again, categorized the same way and clickable so that you can see the trends, what's projected. Population with low vehicle access, vehicle availability, according to the legend there. And then descriptions on all of these about what they mean. Here's industries, major industries in the area. This is a little bit, I guess, less interactive, but there's a link to the SEDA-COG SEDS plan, Comprehensive Development Strategy Plan, as well over on the left. Value of goods in the region. I've clicked on Mifflin County here so you can see what the value is for that particular county, but split out by individual counties. Again, I'll just keep going here very quickly. And a little bit more transportation then for the region. Daily vehicle miles traveled, DVMT, for each of the counties are displayed here again over different years. Pavement with poor rated condition through the International Roughness Index, IRI. Again, for interstate, NHS non-interstate, and then the non-NHS system based on two different volume classifications. Here's safety information presented for roadway fatalities, serious injuries, non-motorized fatalities and injuries, and total vehicle crashes. You can see that over the last several years again. Same thing as with pavement, but for bridges, which bridges, how many bridges are rated in poor condition. We have that broken out by county and then for the entire MPO. And this is split out also into two time periods, 2015 and 2020. Here's information on public transportation and ride sharing. So it's contact information for the various systems by county is provided here on this screen. Another page here is showing active transportation information. There is the capability here of being able to click on what features are shown. In this case, this is Pennsylvania bicycle route V that goes across the MPO region. You can get information about that and other active transportation features in the region. There's also a link to the CSVT website, and this will play a video as well that was put together earlier on about what the CSVT looks like, what it's about, fly-throughs, and so on and so forth. All right, getting farther down into the more important aspects of the LRTP and what the results are, we've provided information on the corridors of opportunity, what those mean, where they're located, and so on, why this is a little bit different last time, and also description of the development of discretionary projects. The user can go in and bring up information and bring up the interactive map about the corridors of opportunity. So the box at the bottom highlights where the user would click to bring up the map. And once they get in there, I think all of you have seen some of this before. There's areas of background data that they can turn off and on. There's information on this particular map on the project lists, pavement conditions, and so on. And that is fully interactive. Again, clicking on the symbols here will bring up information. I think this is a poor condition bridge. You can see it has an ID number and tells you more about the location. And that's specific to each aspect of what's shown there. The different types of information will be brought up for each symbol. The next section is revenue forecast. So we provided information going on through the end of the LRTP period. That's one piece of the LRTP itself that's been updated since the first version. So if people want to see the numbers and look at the projections, this is where they would have access to that. We've also provided information on the public participation and stakeholder outreach that has been performed over the last 2 to 3 months here now, again, mostly with the assistance of Michael Baker to help frame how that was conducted. There's a list here of what was done in the way of this outreach. There is the ability to drill down here. I've sort of put this into 2 parts. With the second box down there, click here to navigate to the next slide. The next slide, or the bottom of this slide, actually shows some examples of what was retrieved from the online survey from the over 200 people that responded to it. Some of this is included in the actual LRTP document, but you can see much more information than we summarized in the LRTP. Here's some information about working at home, related to working at home because of the COVID situation. The next section is the project listing. There are links here to the STC survey, to the coordinated transit plan. And if you want to see information about various projects, here's the map, and you can get to the listing for each one of the asset management projects, the larger projects that we coordinated and working on with District 2 and District 3. So you can get a summary of what particular project, whether it's a longer linear project or more of a point type project, what that's all about, including the costs. The discretionary projects are also listed here. Lots of information for each one of them. Same thing, more linear projects as compared to point projects. They're both included here. So as long as the user wants to spend and look at these projects, they have the capability of seeing all of them in this format. The last part of what I'll talk about today, and the last part of this online setup, is if people want to link to the SEDA-COG MPO website, they can do it through this area of the executive summary. And there's also another link here to the interactive hub site where we've seen some of that information already. We also have a contact place at the bottom of the presentation and the bottom of the website. What will happen is if anyone wants to provide comments, we have sort of an alias email here, but that will go to me to collect information and complete the comments listing here. We also have phone numbers and the address of people want to approach or provide comments that way. So I think, just to wind up here this morning, I think it's a very nice approach, given the circumstances we've been under over the last year now, a little over a year, especially because of COVID. In one way, it's forced us, I think, to be more creative and to be able to use Michael Baker's group to help provide some of these online tools, particularly, has been very helpful. But I think it also forms the basis of perhaps setting a little bit of a new standard about how we go on in future years to provide public input, coordination tools, new things that we have talked about for a while and we'd like to keep going. So this is a good foundation, I think. Again, just to reiterate things I've said before, this is not an end set of tools or set of capabilities. We want to continue to use these kind of things as time goes forward past the LRTP period. So I think we have a good basis for doing that. And I think we're all pleased at how this is winding up to present this information, collect information, and move on to next phases of being able to implement LRTP related projects and recommendations. So I'll stop there right now. I don't know if Jim or Catherine or Brian wishes to add anything, or if people have comments or questions. What we do want to do today is get your permission to go out starting Monday to collect public comments for a 30-day period. Again, that will be from May 24th to June 22nd, where we can open this up in a forum for receiving public comment during that 30-day period, and then also have the June 3rd public meeting that also complements that. So I'll stop here.
Hey, Dawn, this is Brian. Very comprehensive overview. And you may have touched on this. I may have missed it. But one other point from earlier this year is the plan was presented to the agency coordination meeting, the ACM, as part of that consultation. So that fulfills a requirement that we had to be coordinating with those who are representing the resource agencies. That requirement was fulfilled earlier this year. So I just wanted to mention that. I may have missed it, but I did want to mention that for the group's awareness.
Right. Thanks, Brian. Okay, I'll turn it back over to Jim, I guess, at this point.
All right, so with that background, with that presentation, with that introduction to where we are with the long-range transportation plan, again, as Don mentioned, he conducted a survey of your offices. If you'd indicated that you were open to the general public without requiring appointments and it was your preference, you can look to receive a copy of this draft study this afternoon. So with all those things in place, do we have a motion to take this out for public comment?
Steve Phillips, motion.
Right. Thank you, Steve. For
Greg Moulter, second.
Greg, thank you for the second. Is there any further discussion on this? Then hearing none, would all the members in favor of beginning the public comment period, please signify by saying aye.
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 If there are any opposed, please signify by saying nay. All right, and if there are any who wish to abstain, please note at this time. Hearing none, then we will take the motion as approved, and we will share the information and begin the public comment period on Monday, May 24th, to be concluded on Tuesday, June 22nd, and we will report back to you on how that went at the June 25th MPO meeting. Thank you as members, and in particular for those of you who participated on the steering committee for this, or have worked with us through the district strategy days or other outreach sessions, and who provided comments. To get this far, I think this is one of the best looking documents, one of the both most comprehensive and best presented documents that we've had in this stage of the process. And I'd also like to extend our thanks to the Michael Baker team for the ideas and the support that they brought to the table to help us get there. They've certainly pushed us well out of our comfort zone and got us thinking about new things that we think are going to lead us to a better place. So thank you for that, and please reach out to us with any questions as the comment period moves forward. All right, then that brings us past item G to item H. Mr. Herman, if you could take us through the transit asset management performance targets.
Thank you, Jim. This would be another action item. We have a resolution in the packet, starts on page 103, carries over on to page 104. We ran this resolution that's in the packet for your consideration by PennDOT's Bureau of Public Transportation, in particular Andy Batson, one of the managers there. We've had discussions with him, and we're working to address this issue. As those of you on the membership have been involved with performance measures. We've acted on and approved safety performance measures, pavement bridge performance measures, and system performance targets in the past. But there's also a requirement that we approve transit asset management targets as well. So that's what we have this item in the packet for here today to address that. Essentially, it boils down to saying that the MPO would adopt the performance targets that are included in Pennsylvania's Transit Asset Management Group Plan, and that follows starting on page 105 of the packet. These targets are for transit capital assets, in particular the revenue vehicles, non-revenue vehicles, and facilities. So any administrative offices or equipment maintenance offices that transit operators might have. So covers those facilities along with the vehicles that are actually transporting paying customers and then their staff cars. There's a requirement for the MPO to adopt this set of transit asset management performance targets for use in planning and programming activities. There's no funding incentive for meeting or exceeding the targets, and there's really no penalties for failure to meet them. Rather, the adoption of these targets is intended to fulfill an important administrative requirement that came about in some recent federal transportation bills and regulations, and it's in order to help guide planning and programming decisions with respect to asset management. So, pretty brief item, for your consideration. We just wanted to get these details out here, get the resolution, and we have included, as I mentioned, the state group plan in the packet. Starts on page 105. And if you want to see those actual targets, they're on page 114 of the packet, and you'll see those listed there in the table. It shows the rolling stock or the revenue vehicles. It gives you the fiscal year 2019 to 20 target, the current performance percentages, and then the fiscal year 20 to 21 targets. And the same for the non-revenue vehicles and the facilities that they may have for administrative or maintenance purposes, or a few that may have passenger or parking facilities as well. So those targets are listed there. And this statewide group plan, it gets revised each year. This iteration that we have in the packet was from September of 2020. And so if those targets change, for future versions of this, the way we have the resolution worded is just that it'll be, the most current version of the Transit Asset Management Group Plan that the MPO would authorize and approve those targets that are listed for transit asset management. So as again, I said, we had run this by Andy Batson, and he checked with the Federal Transit Administration. This should address the administrative requirement, and they thought that the language in the resolution was satisfactory. So we'd like to entertain a vote on this matter, and first put it out for any questions, comments, and then also look for a motion, a second, and approval of the resolution to approve the statewide Transit Asset Management Group Plan targets for submission then to PennDOT afterward. So I know we've been talking about performance measures a lot over the past couple of years, but are there any specific questions with regard to the transit targets here? Okay, if there are none, do we have a motion to approve the resolution before the group?
This is Eric Staley. I'll make a motion to accept the resolution as presented.
Great, thank you, Eric, for the motion. Do we have a second?
Kerry Mullins, PennDOT, second.
Carrie, thank you for that. All in favor of approving this resolution to approve the Pennsylvania Group Plan and Transaction Management targets, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. And are there any abstentions? Okay, well, thank you for your time here today in consideration of that. If there are any revisions we need to do in the future, we'll bring those back to the group, but we'll get that signed, approved, and sent off to PennDOT. Thank you. Next is just a quick verbal update. There's nothing in your packet. It's the 2023 12-year program public comment opportunities update. Just wanted to mention that the public comment period concluded April 14th. Since we had last met, we had done heavy promotion of that on social media and emails off to municipalities and other stakeholders. We haven't seen the results for our region yet, but just on a global basis across the Commonwealth, State Transportation Commission received 7,423 survey responses. And so they exceeded the goal. I'm talking about performance. They exceeded the goal of 7,000, a little over 400 more. And there were 2,473 map points. So when you can go in that map and you can identify intersections or other locations that you have concerns with safety or congestion, traffic signal operations, bike ped concerns, the need for new trails, things of that nature that are typically submitted, or bridges that are in need of upgrades. Over 2,473 map points. So actually completing the survey, 1,900 people had attended the public forum that was held as well as an online public forum. So very, very good metrics, I think. And, we've been pushing the electronic means, and it really engages people at a higher level than the former, official hearings and public meetings would have done. It's more convenient and you get more input. So it's working well. So we'll get those in GIS format, shapefile format. We'll be able to take a look at those and identify some clusters again, as far as the comments that are coming in within the 8-county MPO region. We'll look to get those sometime in June, more than likely, and can start to perform some of that analysis. We already have the great information coming out of the local prioritization meetings that have been held with the counties and their engineers and PennDOT staff. And Catherine's going to give us an update on the local bridge prioritization process next. But this is all part of that process, so it'll feed into it. And as far as timeline, probably would have a draft tip developed by late this year, December, for submission to PennDOT and central office. And we'll go through our normal additional analysis and public involvement on the draft tip for next year. And then we would look to probably have adoption in June of 2022 for the next transportation improvement program, the 2023 tip. So any questions, comments on that before we get into Catherine's update on the local bridge and other concerns that were raised during the prioritization meetings? Okay, hearing none, I'll turn it directly over to you, Catherine. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everybody. Just two quick updates here, one on the local bridge prioritization process, and then also on the active transportation committee. Starting on, just page 119 in your packet, I did include a little snapshot of the calendar showing the timeline for the local bridge process. I wanted to say thank you. All of the counties have completed their meetings with us and PennDOT, and we have their priorities. Meeting notes will be distributed back to everyone as soon as possible. My goal is the end of next week to have everyone receive those back and verify that we all heard the same thing. And that would keep us pretty close to on schedule here if you check out the timeline. The next step will be to get the survey ready to go, and that will head back out to members. The survey just includes a few questions about each structure that has been selected, just some additional information to add into the ranking. And that should be arriving to everyone probably within the first 2 weeks of June. And hopefully we can keep that moving and everything will stay on schedule with our slightly advanced schedule this year to hopefully have it ready to go for September 17th. Just at the bottom there, I did include the link to the online map that was made if anybody needs any help with that. When you're filling out your survey, you can certainly check that out. And also PennDOT One Map is a great resource as well. Does anyone have any questions on the local bridge process? All right, hearing none, I'll do a quick update on the Active Transportation Committee. We did have our last meeting on Wednesday. We had a great presentation on demonstration projects, which tend to be smaller, lower cost projects. And we specifically talked about a few that could be happening potentially in Bloomsburg as a follow-up to their plan that they had just completed. If you'd like more information on that, I believe the presentation was recorded, so I can certainly share that out with everyone. The work group meeting schedule is certainly available upon request, and I believe it'll come out in the newsletter that Steve is going to be sending out. And our next meeting should be in August, and that will include chair and vice chair elections. And I think that's most of what is going on. Does anybody have any questions on the Active Transportation Committee? All right, if that's everything, I will pass it back to Jim.
Okay, and just rounding out at the bottom end of the agenda here, this brings us up to member forum. As always, we have an item in the packet, items of potential member interest, and we want to call out a couple of highlights from that. There are a couple of opportunities to provide comment in the first section. So on page 121, you'll find a link to an automated vehicles survey. This is being conducted by PennDOT. What they're trying to do with this is figure out what we think, what we know about connected and automated vehicles, so it can help them tune their efforts moving forward. Another comment period called out there is for the PennDOT Pathways project. Again, we had a presentation about that program at the March meeting that was delivered by Larry Shiflett. That program has an open public comment period through June 1st and a town hall meeting coming up on Tuesday. We've seen some additional outreach in our office, and we've seen some notes from county planners that it's coming out direct to you as well. It looks like the data that they're showing to look at the impacts of these tolls shows that some of the trips traveling through a couple of the proposed tolling locations on Interstate 80 and 81 has a trip end, origin or destination in the Berwick area. So we did share a list of local contacts with the consultant. We expect them to follow up with that. I don't think we have Jack Kittle in the meeting today, but he was included in that list, and also Damien at the borough, as well as people that they should be talking to understand what they know about how that could potentially impact residents. A couple of other highlights to hit. We would note that the multimodal funding round handled by CFA is open. Applications are due July 31st, and we expect the Arley application round to open up in June, as it typically does. So that's our quick list of highlights. Are there any members that would like to provide a brief update about your organization or about items of interest to the MPO committee at this time?
Jim, we had a couple questions just to see where we are as far as, are we on track with the 54-642 safety corridor project? probably more directed towards District 3 PennDOT, who isn't with us at the present time, but
Well, it looks like we've got Chris King still on the call. Chris, are you able to step in and talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, I can step in and talk about it. Basically, and I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, so there is a large private development in planning stages directly in the project area that has potentially large ramifications on the operation of what is being proposed.
I've been somewhat familiar with that project. I'm also familiar with the fact that that project will have a large ramification on the development.
You mean the 54090 project?
54642.
Yeah, I mean, the best of my knowledge, we've basically pushed it out a year until this development, you know, can provide more details on trips, etc.
Okay.
So that is, I believe, where we're at. I'm just logging in and looking if I have anything else here. Basically, when that came up, it kind of pushed it a year out, and I don't know where we are with getting their traffic data.
Okay.
But I can find out more specifics.
Well, I appreciate it if we get some feedback on that. I'll keep my mouth shut until I hear something.
All right. Well, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I mean,
Understood. Understood.
I mean,
As
if you have
far as we
concerns, you know, that you want to make sure are addressed, you know, let me know and I'll make sure they're communicated.
Not so much any concerns, just the fact that we are still on the books. The money is allocated. We are moving forward. The
Oh,
plans
yeah.
that
Yep.
presented to the county are the same plans that we're still looking at utilizing.
When did you see the plans?
I believe it was before we started going into actually adding it to the tip as a project.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, we have pretty detailed preliminary plans developed. I know it took a little bit of it got held up a little bit when we added the park and ride.
Yeah.
So that affected the schedule a little bit. But yeah, we're currently showing, we're still showing an April 22 let date, but that's not going to happen. We have a physical ready date of May 2023. We are throwing, you know, all the money we can at the project. It is a massively expensive project for our region in SEDA-COG. I think the estimate's over 20 million now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still moving forward.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other comments, questions, updates from your organizations?
I just have a question for Steve. What's the ceiling on the TAP application this year?
It's a bit of a soft ceiling, $1 million, but if you can show that it's regionally significant or tied to some other larger needs, you know, if there's a really significant safety issue there or economic development impacts, I think you can go above $1 million, but typically they like to keep it at $1 million just since it's so competitive and there's so many applicants with limited dollars, $18 million, you know, given, and then potentially some more. So yeah, $1 million is kind of the soft ceiling.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then if there's nothing else, then I think we're tending towards wrap up. We are still planning for a virtual meeting on June 25th, but at that time, we'll look to have a conversation about where we are with either going to a hybrid or going back to a live meeting. So hang in there with us. We'll do at least one more of these Ring Central format meetings, and do some thinking about now and then about where your organizations are and what your comfort level is towards coming back to more normal operations. And if it's helpful, maybe we can share some of the information about the protocols that'll be in effect at SEDA-COG at that time. All right, if there's nothing else, then at 11:04, I am going to adjourn the May 21st meeting of the MPO. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jim.
Hey,
Have a
thank
good
you.
weekend, Jim.
Oh, you
Thank
too.
you, Jim.